So, originally in this video I was planning to make a throw barbarian, but you all wanted a frenzy barbarian instead so bad. So here we go. You shall ask and I shall deliver. The Frenzy Barbarian mini playthrough.
Beware foul demons and beasts.
Now, the weird thing about this is that I have somewhat already done this mini playthrough since I was a Frenzy Barbarian in normal in my Whirlwind Barbarian mini playthrough, so most of the things in normal are going to be pretty much the same. Although, since then, I have grown as a player, and so hopefully I will be able to give you a better, more wholesome and more enjoyable mini playthrough experience this time, because last time, let's just say it was about as close to torture as video games can get, especially for me. So with this dude, the early stages of the game are pretty much the same. Be a man, do the hack and slash and kill everything in sight till you reach level 2. Here you can get points into dexterity for the all-important attack rating and the skill point into bash as a prerequisite for double swing. Now I won't be using bash since it is not that good of a skill. It adds knockback and uses a lot of mana, but what I would be using is 2 scepters with the normal attack for now, which I bought from Akara and went on to the den. Scepters deal high physical damage in the beginning, which is why they're so nice, and it also helps that they're a mace because we will be putting points into mace mastery going forwards. This honestly just makes them nicer since it increases their damage, attack rating, and critical hit rate, which basically means a percentage chance of them doing double damage. Now with that, I was able to clear the den. The Barb is tanky, but a little slow to kill large amounts of monsters with no area of effect, so take your time and enjoy every hit as you go is pretty much the approach that I would recommend. After the den, I shopped at Akara for 2 open-socketed scepters. I reset her rolls a few times while doing that because I prefer buying basic scepters with sockets, that is, the ones that have no skills on them since they only cost 350 gold, whereas the ones with skills can go up to the high 10,000s. For stats, you'll see that I like to keep vitality and dexterity at equal levels in the beginning. That's because you get good attack rating from dexterity in the start. Later on, I'll be relying on my items more to give me that attack rating. But with that attack rating for now, I went to kill Bloodraven. She's often easier with melee characters since you can just chase her around and smack her, whereas with ranged characters, she has a habit of dodging most of your attacks and it just makes you waste a lot of mana pots. This barbarian don't need no mana pots though, at least not till he reaches level 6. Now I did that while killing Rakunishu, and the way I like to kill Rakunishu is pretty much how I like to talk to my women. Awkwardly and from a distance. The main danger really is lightning bolts. From Rakunishu, not from the women. Well, sometimes from the women, but anyways. Once I did kill Rakunishu, I got that coveted level 6 that every melee character loves. That's because at level 6 I got AoE in the form of a skill upgrade since I could now put my first points into double swing, and I also got access to use my lovely strangling gas potions. These are great early games since they allow you to sap the monster's health with passive damage, which you can finish off using double swing later on. Now early on, double swing does use a wee bit of mana, but I would be putting points into it till the skill is level 6 or 7, because by that time its mana cost depletes completely. To get to that level, I did Countess runs, which are great for getting experience, and also some runes which you can keep to make some nice rune words going forward. I entered here at around level 6.5 and reached 14 by the time I was done finding my runes. One of those rune words include the obligatory stealth, which I feel like a broken record at this point, but is just an amazing piece of gear for the faster run walk, hit recovery and cast rate that it provides. The latter will be useful while using the teleport staff, but the rest, including the dexterity and the poison resistance, are all very useful right from level 17 when I can wield this. Speaking of level 17, that would be the point that I will be able to wield a flail with 3 of these puppies in it. As you can see, one Tal rune gives you 75 poison damage, so 3 of these will yield a total of 225. Yes, I calculated that on the fly. I am indeed an Asian. The poison damage though does not discriminate, since it actually holds up pretty well throughout normal. For my other weapon, I farmed runes for a malice. Unfortunately, after several attempts, I could not get an ith rune for the life of me, so I just decided to farm 3 eths, which I will cube to an ith to make an ith-el eth later on. For now, I went down to face Andariel. This I did after getting the waypoint on Catacombs level 2, that's because I plan to do some Andariel runs in normal after I'm done killing her first. The key here was really to clear the area around her and then fight her after chugging some antidote potions. My attack rating held up quite well during the fight, and the physical and a little bit of elemental damage from my scepters was enough to take her down. After that started the process of running normal Andariel. So last time I ran Andy, it was with the goal of finding a particular item, Crush Flange. This time I'm just going to wing it and do Andariel runs till level 20. Farming for particular items in Diablo 2 can honestly be akin to grabbing an imaginary brass ring. It actually may never happen, whereas setting a goal like getting to a particular level, that is realistically achievable and honestly helps you a lot mentally while you're going through the process. Now I had some very basic MF gear with 2 chipped topaz in my quilted armor, 2 chipped topaz in my cap, and gloves with 20 odd magic find on them. Not the greatest, but this is Act 1 normal after all, and it was enough pretty much to get me my first decent find, which was Stout Nail. This was a minor improvement over one of my scepters since it had higher enhanced damage, and thus I decided to wield it as of right now. Now just because I'm not searching for particular items doesn't mean I'm not going to get them. In fact, the odds somehow increase since I found the Crush Flange like 2 runs in this time. This item is pretty lucky to get since it would help a lot in boss fights with 33% chance of crushing blow, hacking down 1/8 of the boss's HP every time it connects. The knockback on it is annoying and probably why I wouldn't use it for normal PvM, but I will definitely switch to it for boss fights. Next I got to level 17. Now this is where I got 2 huge upgrades from my runes that I collected earlier. First I got Stealth, which I could wear while traveling to Andariel from the waypoint, which would reduce the runtime by a significant amount. I also got a 3 open-socketed flail from Farah, 13% enhanced damage and all, and put 3 tals in it for massive poison carnage. Those 3 tals really help in terms of damage, especially for normal mobs. Using them, I killed boss packs in the catacombs and got to level 18. This is where I put a point into the skill Battle Cry. This was one of the skills that I overlooked last time I was playing the Barbarian, as it is pretty good, reducing the enemy's damage and defense when under effect. This is great for bosses especially since it makes it easier to hit them due to the lowered defense. I also use this against these ghouls, which can be tough to kill since they have a high monster level, and as a reward I got unique heavy boots from them, which are Gorefoot. A very nice find since these give me 20 faster run walk, 2% mana leech, and also +2 to leap, increasing its knockback radius. Next, I found a rare trident with chance to cast amplified damage, which I thought would be cool to put on my mercenary to take his support role to the next level. That's because he's going to be an Act 2 offensive mercenary with Blessed Aim Aura, which will boost my attack rating as it is. Next, I reached level 20, and that was it for normal and Dariel runs, since that was the goal that I set earlier. Now, I didn't get either of the Hisaru's pieces, which is too bad because the attack rating bonus can be very helpful, so I will have to compensate with putting more points into dexterity for now. I also planned out my skill tree for the future, since I will be getting 2 big skills at level 24, which will be Frenzy and Battle Orders. For now though, Act 2 was going pretty smoothly. This was thanks to being a little over leveled and over geared, which, like I've said before, is never a bad thing for a melee character since it actually makes him have some decent DPS throughout. A little ways in, after getting the cube, I got a 3 open-socketed flail from Vara and made Malice in it. Ith El Eth are the runes that yield this rune word with 100% chance of open wounds, which goes hand in hand with the poison damage from my other flail to provide passive and continuous damage to monsters, which is pretty good for getting through normal, and also prevent monster heal and negative monster defense per hit, which also keeps bosses in check. Now, because I was at a high enough level already, I could avoid annoying areas like the maggot lair using the skill of leap. You can use leap attack as well, but it is generally slower. It has an extra animation at the end, and it also leaves you vulnerable to attacks in the meantime, which is why I prefer using leap over it. Now, with all this monster skipping, I actually reached Durian still at level 20. That's not too bad since I had 2 tricks up my sleeve to make this fight a lot easier. The first was Crushing Blow from Crush Flange, which helped get Durian down to half HP with Battle Cry. The other followed after with my mercenary casting amplified damage, and therefore my melee hits, as well as his, doing double damage, which compensated for the fact that Crushing Blow gets weaker as the monster's health gets lowered. Now, once amplified damage ran out, I battle cried again to improve my chance to hit, and eventually was able to finish him off. The drops from him, quite like the experience from Act 2, were as good as non-existent, so onwards to Act 3 we go. Now, there isn't much to talk about this act neither, since everything was standard fare for the most part. The Barbarian does tank the flares very well though. One thing of note is that I was wielding Crush Flange throughout the jungle because it provides 50% fire resistance, which is very helpful to avoid the crazy fire infernos of the shamans, which can fry your face off otherwise. I also reached Sereno's ruined temple at around level 22. Generally, this is a place where I stop to farm some experience for my characters up to level 24, so I can use a teleport staff going into Act 4. With the Barbarian though, I skipped this since I planned on doing Mephisto runs for some items, and I think the experience will be made up then as well. For that, I went to fight Mephisto for the first time. Mephisto is a scary normal boss due to his high elemental damage and a pretty easy place to lose your characters. So I went to town, seeing the damage he was dealing, to stock up on potions and kept a town portal open when I returned. Crush Flange along with amp damage caused by my mercenary's trident though put in work, as after coming back I was able to hit him constantly and put in some valuable crushing blows, before using the sheer physical damage to finish him off. He didn't drop me anything good this time, just a sparkling mail and Eisenhart's shield, but hopefully that will change in the future. The very near future. So, as you can see, playing the Barbarian is pretty much all about getting to one experience farm spot, farming experience and items, then moving on and getting to the next experience farm spot. This one though is okay for items, but not at all for experience, since I would only be killing one monster mainly, which is Mephisto, so I only will be grinding up to level 25 from 22.5, with which I started this fight. So the main hope was to find some useful loot, and the first of those I got was the set Great Helm, which was Saigon's Visor. Now if you've seen my previous mini playthroughs, you'll know that on its own this item is pretty bland, but with the 2-piece set bonus, it gives attack rating per level and 10% lifesteal, and when you combine that with the set bonuses you get from the gloves, belt or boots, that can be a very nice combo. Other than that, he really didn't drop me much at all for a while. How long of a while? Well, long enough that I reached level 24. Just before doing that though, I shopped for a teleport staff from Ormus, since it is easier now, since it will spawn with a red background since I can't equip it while I'm level 23, and thus it will be quicker for me to check. With that, on the next run I got to level 24. This meant that I could use that teleport staff that I had just found, and more so, I could put a point into my main skill for the playthrough, Frenzy. Now just because I have Frenzy now doesn't mean I'm going to use it all the time. In the beginning, I like to use Frenzy more as a charge up skill. That is to say that I like to get a couple of Frenzy hits in just to get the boost of attack speed and run walk, and then use double swing as my main attack. The reasoning behind this is that Frenzy and double swing have two different attack speed tables, and without any additional IAS on my gear, Frenzy is just going to be too slow at lower levels. Once I get a few skill points into it, it would become self-sustainable later, which is when I will switch to it full time. Other than that, not much happened, and I really did not manage to find anything else good here. To be fair, I didn't do nearly as many runs. I mean, I only ran him for a couple of levels, but still, I was expecting to find at least 2 pieces of the Saigon set. I might have to return for that later on. Now, one of the reasons for the Saigons is the lifesteal that you get from the 2-piece, which my Barbarian is sorely lacking and thus requires a lot of health pots to remain healthy. Izzy was easy to kill though. Much like with every melee character, I distracted him with my mercenary and then wailed on him with the Barbarian till he went down. That took a good while because I undermined his HP a bit and didn't use Crushing Blow from the Crush Flange for this fight. Looking at this, I honestly think that going forward, I would like to make Crushing Blow a permanent part of my attack instead of just keeping it for boss fights, since we're getting to that level where the HP of the monsters is getting quite massive. I also was using Battle Orders during that fight, which is a skill I got at level 25, which boosts my HP and mana. That I used quite a lot in the CS as well, and boy was it needed. This place is where annoying meets dangerous means necromancers with Decrepify. The ghosts play the annoying part by sapping your mana and leaving you unable to attack. Pit lords like Infector are the dangerous ones. Still, I would say that I played pretty well in this fight. First, I kited to separate them, then teleported to reposition my mercenary and myself, and then tried to finish them off one by one, and in the end I was actually able to do it. Same was true for the Decisive fight. You can tell that the additional levels and the access to more HP comes in real handy, and thus my leveling plan is working pretty well here. It has kept me up to pace as the difficulty of the monsters has increased, and thus I will continue this going forward. For now though, no leveling, no strats, not even death can save me from Diablo. Yeah, this is normal Diablo, Chinmay. Doing those 9,000 hell runs made me totally forget what a beast this guy is. His lightning hose attack is in full force here and can absolutely Shrek you. Plus, he seems to make smarter plays as well by freezing you with his cold claw at first to get you stuck, and then unleashing a powerful attack so that this happens. Nobody likes doing the CS with the Barb, and I honestly thought that I might have to do it for a second time. Thankfully, our friend right here doesn't skip leg day, and I was able to leap my way back to the sanctuary. Diablo was left at very low HP anyways at this point, so getting in there and shrekking his face with a skill shrine as well this time for good measure was pretty satisfying. But no, seriously, the skill shrine does help with the attack rating of Frenzy and Double Swing, and with that I was able to finish off what was left of the big scary lizard. As a reward he gave me 2 whole drops. Boy, that's too kind, Diablo. Even for you. Ah yes, and they're garbage. Now that makes it okay, doesn't it? Okay then, moving on to Act 5. This is going to be another one of my stopping points to farm for experience, because this time we're going to be farming not Shank, him I just killed because cheaper potions from Mala, but the guy that we will be focusing on for experience is going to be Eldritch. Now farming him is great since he is a consistent super unique who is very close to the waypoint, and the runs are fairly quick and consistent. I start off with a cry of battle orders, soon after which I used rancid gas potions against the group. I subbed out the teleport staff for now for these gas potions because I really don't need to use it to teleport anywhere, and putting the gas potions on switch just makes it easy to take these guys down with frenzy afterwards. Now this farming yields pretty good experience but also nice drops for gold, which I vendor after every run at Mala. Plus, there are some good items Eldritch can drop as well, like Sander's boots, Angelic's jewelry, or even the Saigons/Hisaru's. I didn't manage to find any of those, but the chances are still there. Well, what he did manage to drop me was a set Grand Scepter soon as I started my farming, which was Siverbs. Now this thing won't be winning any awards, but its max damage based on character level stat is quite neat. Neat enough that I think it would be replacing my Tal flail with this one. Poison damage really starts to suffer in Act 5, with poison resists and even poison immunities like the formidable doors of Act 5 coming to the picture, so it will be nice to replace it with some straight physical damage. Other than that, I really got nothing special here, or even something unspecial, while farming up to level 28. Really, the items that drop here are mostly gold fodder. That I got in heaps, which is pretty good for teleports and for just general convenience in the future. Now, like I mentioned, I moved on at level 28 because at this point Eldritch's experience starts to diminish, and thus I moved on to a better target, Pindle. For him I had to rescue Anya, but before I do that, just look at all of that leveling paying out big time. My Barbarian can stand toe to toe with Bloodlords, nay, champion Bloodlords, because of all the extra health, damage and attack rating I have due to farming experience. Even something like a Javazon struggles against these guys, but my Barbarian was able to get through. That's not to say that my guy doesn't struggle. His struggles came against Frozenstein with his mana burn and constantly freezing me, but I managed to teleport away and separate his group. The mercenary also helped out big time in this fight. Yet another advantage of having a high level character is that you get a high level mercenary as well, who actually does something before just dying in like 2 hits. Well, with all that nice talk about experience farming, it was time to do some more at Pindle. Now again, this was purely for the better experience gain than Eldritch. I really was not expecting much better loot from him, and yeah, I didn't find anything at all while farming him from level 28 to 30. That was a bit harsh. I mean, I like the levels and the gold, but man, you can't help me but notice that this guy has been a wee bit unlucky in terms of drops so far. Well, he is level 30 now, at which point I put a point into Battle Command, which raises my skills to +1, which is a nice pre-buff for battle orders, and also got 1 point into Iron Skin, which I saved from level 29. That's mostly to unlock natural resistances, which I will be getting at the next level. That level I will most probably get at the Ancients fight. Now I've mentioned this before, but Ancients in normal can't spawn with mods like Cold Enchanted, but they can have items that give cold damage, and of course what other Ancient would this suit more than the pesky little Madoc? Therefore, unlike most times, I decided to leave Talik alone and target Madoc because that cold damage was seriously troubling my DPS a lot. The mercenary helped out here again, since that amplified damage on casting was putting in serious work, as with that, Madoc as well as Korlik pretty much got toast in a matter of seconds. Talik was the annoying one left, and although he tried some whirlwind shenanigans, my life pool was sitting quite high, so I wasn't afraid of him too much and was able to take him down. Same goes for the Bale waves. Now starting wave 2, I used the Warcry Taunt to pull enemies out away from Bale's sight. This was done mainly to dodge Bale's Decryptify curse, which makes already difficult situations even difficulter, whereas by pulling these guys out you can deal with them at your own pace, one at a time. The wave that gave me the most trouble though was definitely wave 5, and no surprises here. These guys are tanky as hell and do a lot of damage, and before I knew it, they were able to corner me and my mercenary, who ended up dying not too long after. I was able to escape with my teleport staff and was able to come back to a bit of a brutal and hard fight, but one that my Barbarian was eventually able to win. Looking back at it, I probably should have switched to the Crush Flange for this fight itself, since the knockback may have actually given me some breathing room as well, but whatever. That Crush Flange is being used to put in work against Bale. Now he was very feisty in the beginning as he kept jumping around, freezing me and sucking all my mana, but I persisted. I really don't know which was better against him though, my Mercy's amplified damage or Battle Cry for increased chance to hit him with his lower defense. I know what could have been better though, the drops. Bale, you absolute troll. He gave me set chain gloves and unique gauntlets. If those rolls had been reversed, I could have gotten the Saigon gloves that I was after, and also some chance guards, which would have been really nice for magic finding, but instead I got frostburns and bloody Kleegloss. I was not having that, so after finishing normal, I decided to stay a while and magic find at Mephisto to hopefully get another Saigon's piece. belt slash boots slash armor would be fine, but the gloves was what I was really after. Well, I did get gloves. Unique chain gloves to be precise, which were the chance guards I was talking about, and pretty nice ones too, with 38% magic find. Not really what I was here for, but I'll take these as a bonus. Now, as you can see, I also did end up finding Saigon's belt, which does allow me to get the attack rating and lifesteal bonuses from the 2-piece set bonus, but I really wanted the gloves for the 30% attack speed increase for the increased DPS, which is why I persisted. My persistence was rewarded by another Saigon's piece, this time the armor. You know, at this rate I'll probably end up finding full Saigons for Nightmare, which honestly is fine by me. Just as I said that, Mephisto introduced another option to spoil me by dropping me set heavy gloves, which were Sanders. Now these do give 20% increased attack speed and also have 40 to life, which is very good. The thing with Frenzy is that it does have a 28% breakpoint, so with the Saigon's 30% it actually would have made a noticeable difference. Thing is, I also might end up having to spend hours to find them, so screw that noticeable difference that I just told you about and we'll just make do with these. Now after that grind, I stepped into Nightmare and found a major problem with my build, which were the resistances. Now this I fixed using two methods. Number one was shopping at Nightmare Charcy to get items with resistances. I was sort of limited here since my belt, helmet and glove slots were all logged in. So the other way that I compensated my res is I put points into the skill of natural resistance, which provides all resistance per level. Now onwards from there, I moved on to the Countess Tower to farm some Nightmare level runes, which I needed a lot of. Now my first Countess run was kind of an embarrassing one since my mercenary died and I had to spend the entirety of the run jammed up against a corner, and that's when I decided to ditch the Siverb's weapon and equip the Crush Flange because the knockback might actually help me for once since I am kind of undergeared. Generally, after I'm done with the Countess grind though, I do the thing where I show you my Nightmare gear and the build, but instead with this guy, after farming her for a little while, I went down to take on Endario straight away. That's because to really complete my gear, I want to farm Endario in hopes of getting a nice exceptional class weapon which will give me some good base damage. Right now, all of my damage either comes from Crushing Blow or either passively from open wounds. Benefit of that is that something like Endario takes the same amount of time to kill as any other white mob, just depends on the Crushing Blow RNG and a little extra time to drain her life pool from open wounds. The disadvantage of which is literally everything else also takes just as long to kill as a huge boss like Endario. You can see what I'm saying come into effect when Endario gets to low HP and how long it takes for me to kill her from there, since my physical damage is literally less than 200, which is not something that cuts it at this stage. Also, as a side effect of that, I don't really have any lifesteal. That's because lifesteal replenishes your life from a percentage of the raw damage you deal, and like I mentioned before, since my damage is so low, my lifesteal is pretty much negligible as well. Therefore, the Endario fight and the subsequent runs I'll do of her can prove to be quite dangerous. All in all, my goal here would be to reach level 50 from killing her. I was level 40 when I reached her anyways, and from past experiences I have noticed that her XP does start to diminish after level 50. Plus 10 levels hopefully will be enough to drop most of the good stuff that she can drop. Speaking of the good stuff, the first good drop I got from her was not the weapon I was really looking for, but rather a really pretty good piece of armor, the unique full plate mail, which is gold skin. 35 alt resistances and a base that makes my Barb look cool? Sign me up. Oh, also it adds like quite a lot of defense too. Yeah, sure, that's important as well. Next, I got another piece of armor, set gloves this time, which I was looking for before as well, Saigon's Gauge. Now the thing with these is that these are definitely better than Sanders, since they give me additional attack rating, and also that 30% IAS does get me over another breakpoint, so I'll keep these over them. A few runs later, I did manage to find an exceptional class unique, Hexfire. This unique Shamshir is one item that you would have thrown away multiple times while magic finding, but one man's trash is another man's treasure, as this sword comes with good enhanced damage, from which I got a middling roll of 150. Also, it adds fire resistance and ignore target's defense, which greatly increases my chance to hit mobs since it sets their defense to 0. The only part I wish was better was if it had some fire damage on it instead of the +3 to fire skills, which kind of go to waste, but I'm not going to grumble too much since this was a much needed upgrade. Finally, I can at least one-hit these little carver dudes. Peace at last. The sword brought in some good luck with it as well, since next run itself I found the unique ghost armor from a random mob in Catacombs 2. These I just clear out so that they don't trouble me while I fight Andariel, but if they want to drop cool stuff like this armor with +1 to all skills and cannot be frozen, bring them on. Speaking of cool stuff, Andariel dropped me a cool weapon next, which is very interesting since it is spell steal. Now, this isn't interesting because I can't use it for melee because two-handers and frenzy barbarians don't really fit. I wonder why, but this can be in my offhand as a replacement for my teleport staff. The additional benefit to this is that it will add Decrepify charges, which lowers enemies' physical resistance and makes them slower as well. I tried having some fun with this over a couple of runs, but as you can see there, the Decrepify really doesn't last long at all, and it also overrides my battle cry, which I think I would prefer to be using over it since it kinda does the same thing by lowering enemies' attack and defense, only battle cry is free. So yeah. Next drop was both cool and extremely useful since I found the set amulet that took me days to find last time I did a Barbarian, Angelic Wings. In a hilarious turn of events though, I haven't found a single Angelic's Ring yet, but when I do, the combo of both will give me some mad attack rating bonus, which will at least let me shed myself off from using the Saigon's combo. Well, the list of amazing finds doesn't really end there actually. Andariel really put out here and gave me an amazing weapon going forwards since it was the unique battle sword Head Striker. Now this weapon has pretty good damage as it is with 150% enhanced damage, but what really sets it apart is the max damage and critical strike per character level. That helps the damage from this sword scale massively, and at character level 67, this will literally provide 100% deadly strike, which will mean guaranteed double damage on every hit. A very, very good find, which I will definitely use. Even with the deadly strike right now at 70%, the damage difference is very significant and noticeable. With that, I got the Endarial runs in a little faster, and I also ended up finding a pretty cool yet useless find, unique shark skin belt, which was an ethereal razor tail. If I were doing a throw barbarian like I planned to do before, this drop would have been absolutely amazing with its piercing attack and such, but even on its own, this belt is not bad with good dexterity bonus and attacker takes damage mods. Also yeah, now that I found the amulet, I'm finding it troubling to find a single Angelic Ring. Screw you, Cathan. Well, I didn't have much to be upset about with these next two drops since they both helped increase my magic find. The first was a unique ring which I found en route to Endarial, and it was of course a Nagel. 22% at that as well, so a middling roll from the 15 to 30% MF that you can get. Not only that, but it also gives me a nice bonus of 67 attack rating, so that's pretty cool as well. Keeping the MF train going, I found set Greaves next, which were the final piece of the Saigons puzzle. The reason these are awesome is because they not only give me 20 faster run walk and 40 cold resistance, but with the 3-piece set bonus, they also provide me with a nice bonus of 50% magic find, which is pretty huge and very helpful since I still plan to grind a lot with this guy. Speaking of set piece bonuses, I finally found the Angelic Ring, which will help me get the mad attack rating bonus I was after. These aren't that hard to find at all since there are only 2 set rings in the game and they're pretty much equally rare, so I wasn't too worried about finding this. But it is a crucial piece since it is the one that gets the AR bonus per character level, which is even better than Saigon's, so I think I will be fine with respect to attack rating on this character now for sure. See all the nice things that come when you don't go out searching for specific items? The game knows, people. The game knows. Well, with that, I got to level 50, which set me up really nicely in terms of experience, and all the farming sets me up really well in terms of gear as well. Now you can see why I really wanted to do the Endaria runs before the breakdown of my character, but here it is, and this time we get to enjoy a rare breakdown in Act 2. Shame as well, since I think this is the most aesthetically pleasing acts of them all. I should do breakdowns here all the time. Well anyways, we start here with the weapon, the highlight reel and the star of the show, the Head Striker. Very glad I found a weapon of this caliber since the damage I'm putting out of this thing is really solid and the killing speed is way faster than having to rely on open wounds from Malice, which I was doing when I started running Endarial. With this sword I get 150% enhanced damage on an exceptional class weapon, so that's a pretty good base right there, but then it gets even better with +1 to max damage per level and +1.5 to percentage deadly strike per level, the latter of which makes sure right now that every 3 out of my 4 hits does double damage. It also has other nice stats like Prevent Monster Heal, which is going to come in really handy a lot in Act 3, and also 15 points to Strength. The only 2 things I would say that this thing is missing is Crushing Blow and Attack Speed. That is where my secondary weapon comes in, and that's the beauty of Frenzy, you see. You can have your main damaging weapon in your primary slot, and in my secondary slot I have this really cheap and simple Strength Rune Word in a 2 open-socketed scimitar that I bought from normal Charcy because that's really all I need. This complements my Head Striker beautifully since this adds the element of Crushing Blow, and since Frenzy's attack speed is calculated based on the average of the base speed of both of your weapons, making this AM tier in a scimitar allows me to attack faster with both my weapons and thus increase my overall DPS. As a man who is extremely pleased with cheap but effective stuff, I gotta say I'm very happy with this combo. Failing this though, or I guess I should say in other circumstances where I would have found a good mace based weapon, I would have instead opted for a black runeword in a flail to serve pretty much the same purpose the strength does right now. Now something with the whirlwind barbarian that you may remember is that cannot be frozen was not something I really wanted, but with this guy it is absolutely crucial. While fighting in Dariel, cold enchanted mobs were the bane of this guy's existence, so having a source of cannot be frozen like the Spirit Shroud right here is a godsend. It is a pretty good armor overall, not necessarily my preferred choice for a barbarian since those +1 to skills don't necessarily increase my damage that much. They're just nice to have, but if possible, I would like to replace this with something like a Durian shell so that I can get some resistances instead. Speaking of resistances, I get some from my helmet at the moment, which is Dusk Deep. Yup, the helmet that you've all thrown away probably a million times while magic finding. Those 15 all res are pretty nice for my character and that's why I'm using it. The other reason is obvious because I don't have to use Saigon's helm anymore, and that is possible because of this beauty, Angelic Wings. Now I had somebody comment on my video saying that Angelic set is good only for the AR bonus, and I disagree with that. Looking at this amulet, it gives 20% damage taken goes to mana, which is a big deal for me since I don't really have any mana steal, and considering that I do get hit quite a lot, this actually compensates for that. Also, you have 75 to life, which is a really nice stat regardless. Of course you stay for the life, but you come for the attack rating and the boost is massive. 12 attack rating per level, which adds to my base, which is then amplified by percentage modifiers added by my skills. But building that base is crucial, and this little ring takes care of it all by itself. I've only found one of these till now, so in my second ring slot I'm using a Angelic Ring since this also provides a little bit of attack rating and 22% magic find, cause why not? For my gloves and belt combo, I'm using Saigon's 2-piece. So even though I'm not using the helmet, which is the usual accompaniment to the gloves that you may have seen before, and kind of the only reason I've used the set in the past, this time I'm using it for the gloves and the belt, again for the 2-piece set bonus of 30% increased attack speed and 10% lifesteal, which all combined are still better stats that I would have gotten on any other set of gloves till now. The belt adds a nice bonus since it gives me plus 20 to life, 20 to fire res, and also the ability to carry 4 rows of potions. Then are my boots. Now, these are the most weirdly decent pair of rare boots I've ever seen. I mean, they have faster run walk, faster hit recovery, attack rating, and tri-res, so they come off as something pretty GG, and then you look at the actual values of those stats and you're left kind of disappointed. But then you factor in that I found these in Act 1 Nightmare, so it's pretty much a simple harmonic motion around the notion of whether these are good or not, but they work for me at the end of the day, providing me with adequate resistances in the elements that I need, and thus I'm keeping them. Speaking of resistances, my charms provide me mostly with that, combined with a little bit of faster hit recovery, life, and I think I have one small charm in there with attack rating as well. Now with all that gear, my resistances are looking pretty good. This res actually looks better than it is. I'll explain more later, but it serves me pretty well right now, and again, it is quite a lot better than it was when I started Andy farming. My attack rating and damage is also sitting at all-time highs. That obviously is due to the higher attack rating offered by Angelics, and also in part due to my new skill distribution. So I respec this character after finding all the new gear, and the main things to note are that in my combat skills I have maxed Frenzy. This is in contrast to something like Whirlwind, where I prefer to max out the Mastery skill before putting all my points into Frenzy, but here it is necessary because putting points into it increases its attack speed and run walk bonus, which makes it so that I don't have to use double swing at all, since Frenzy attacks fast enough that it is essentially self-sustainable. You may also notice that I have a point in Berserk. This does add a little bit of magical damage to my normal Frenzy attack, which is nice, but I generally like to use this exclusively for physical immunes, which are annoyingly in my way. Those obviously being few and far between, but it is still nice to have a weapon against them. That's really the benefit of the Barbarian, is that you have an inbuilt toolset of sorts to deal with pretty much all your problems, and that can really be seen in the Warcry tree. Now here I have put 1 point each into Shout, Battle Orders, and Battle Command, which are my main 3 pre-buffs. The only thing to talk about here is that the reason that I have only 1 point in BO is because, as you can see, my life pre-BO is sitting pretty high and mighty at 1187, so I didn't feel any need to put any additional points into it to try to boost that. As for the rest of the war cries, I have put 1 point into Howl as a prerequisite for Taunt. Taunt can be situationally very useful, and one of those situations is Bale runs, when you want to drag out the waves out of Bale's Decrepify radius to kill them easily and faster. Next, I have 1 point into Battle Cry. Shoutouts to the guy who pointed out the usefulness of this skill in my last mini playthrough's comment section. This skill has been a lifesaver as it effectively reduces the need for having too much attack rating, since I could just lower the target's defense, which works just as well. Moving on from that skill tree, we get to combat masteries, and here my skill points are placed in a pretty obvious manner. I have 1 point into increased speed, since who doesn't like to run fast, am I right? Then I have 4 hard points into natural resistance, which is one of the best skills ever. Just 4 points gets me 40 all resistances, which is the majority of where my resistances actually come from, as you can see. After that, I dump the rest of my points into sword mastery for the damage and attack rating bonus. It also gives me a decent chance at critical strike. Although it does the same thing as deadly strike, the calculation for each is done separately by the game, so they don't stack per se, but it is still a nice thing to have overall, since I have a very high chance of doing double damage with my head striker. As for my boy Pratham, he's wearing a blue chainmail which gives him Frost Nova on struck, which is very nice for crowd control. Speaking of, my mercenary is actually a nightmare defensive mercenary, so he has the Holy Freeze aura instead of the Might aura some people may have been expecting. This again is thanks to one of the conversations in my comments that it was pointed out to me that Holy Freeze's defensive capabilities might actually overcome the little bit of damage that I might get from something like Might aura, and guess what? You guys were right once again. Coming back to this armor, it provides him with some all resistances as well, and on the same note, his mask, the Face of Horror, does much the same. Now it also has the hit causes monster to flee modifier, which, if this was on my character, would have definitely been an annoying stat. Quite akin to knockback actually, since it would interrupt my attacks. On my mercenary though, it can often turn out to be convenient since he is often fighting annoying minions anyways, and this can send them running for a while I deal with the boss. Finally, to give him the strength to do all this, we have strength. This I use on pretty much all my mercenaries because it is cheap, efficient, and gives him everything he could want. Damage, crushing blow, and lifesteal. Good stuff. Now with all that shiny new gear and build, you can see that my Barbarian is slicing through stuff in Maggot Lair. The increased attack speed feels really nice, and so does the cannot be frozen. As you saw, I fought 2 cold enchanted mobs in a row there, and without the Spirit Shroud, I would have been there for like 5 minutes trying to unthaw and get a hit in, whereas here, I can dispatch of them quickly and move on. It's not all apple juice and peaches though. The Barbarian is still a strictly melee character, and you really see his lack of large area of effect where you can get surrounded really easily by mobs, like in the Arcane Sanctuary and the Tomb. As you saw there though, I can deal with them. It just takes perseverance and a few more potions than it would have taken for something like a Javazon or Necro with Corpse Explosion. Still, the Barbarian is pretty good on taking on targets mano a mano like in the Durian fight. Here he honestly performed exceptionally well, and so did the mercenary. Him and my Barb formed a little nice partnership of landing crushing blows one after the other, which was the main contributor of getting Duriel's health so low so quickly. As you can see, Battle Cry is something that I always use on bosses no matter what, since they are generally harder to hit because of the higher monster level, but this bug was no match for my frenzied little friend right here in this case. Act 3 again highlights my point of melee characters not really having a large area of effect with their attacks. I mean, you may be attacking fast and in many directions, but at the end of the day, you'll still have only 2 hands as your weapons, and it is especially apparent in this act when you're getting surrounded by the pesky and numerous little flares or dolls. Other than that, the act was pretty breezy, and this Travincle shows this. Now here I used Taunt to draw out most of the minions and dealt with them separately. Then I went in to take on the council members. This was honestly more for my mercenary's safety than anything else, but with all that, he actually did end up surviving the fight and provided some nice support with Holy Freeze and crushing blows here and there. Similarly to that, my experience in Endurance level 3 was pretty positive. I wanted to take on the boss packs here since I planned to magic find Mephisto for a while, and like I pointed out in normal, that doesn't give a lot of experience on its own, so I'll plan to kill these guys alongside with him to hopefully get some good levels from them and some good items from Mephisto. Speaking of Mephisto, it was pretty much similar to Durian. I was expecting my attack rating to have starting to fall behind at this point, but then I remembered that I had Angelic's 2-piece. Yeah, I really love that set. Don't know if you can tell. Well, you can't really blame me neither, since it made sure that my Barbarian was able to hit some nice crushing blows early on and then finish off the fight at the tail end with raw damage. All of this is honestly a very positive and pleasant setup for the MF runs that I'm about to do of this guy from my current level of 52 to level 60. It all started right here with this nice double drop of 2 very useful items. The set meshed boots, which are Natalia's soul, and of course these boots being excellent because of the 40 faster run walk and dual res that they provide, which can roll from 15 to 25 cold and lightning resistance. With above average rolls, they are going to be nice to fix the resistance problems that have been plaguing my Barbarian for Nightmare. On the more offensive side, we have the set winged helm, which is Guillaume's face. As a stark contrast, this item is all about damage. 35% crushing blow, 15% deadly strike, and 15 to strength, with 30% FHR as a nice bonus. I think this is my favorite set item period, and you can see why. Thus, this drop at Nightmare Mephisto makes me really happy for my Barbarian going into hell. For now though, I think this would work great on my Mercenary as well. Now I did find some nice weapons during this farm sesh as well, including the Wild Husk Sword, which gives amp damage on striking, Butcher's Pupil, which provides tons of attack speed and will certainly add a lot of damage once upped to a small crescent, even an old favorite of mine in the form of the Flesh Renderer, which adds Deadly Strike, damage, and Crushing Blow all in one slot, or going back to the axe route, the Guardian Naga. However, there is one thing that has to be kept in mind while planning my weapon for hell. That is the increase in physical resistances of the monsters. Otherwise, even my head striker right now will stand toe-to-toe with any of those weapons, especially once upped. However, because of the aforementioned, I need to diversify my damage for the physically resistant, and therefore the weapon that I was most excited about in this haul was the unique flanged mace, Sunshrill Frost. Now I know, on the face of it, this little thing does not hold a candle to the other powerhouses I showed to you before, but what it does have is cold damage, freezes target, and the all-important cannot be frozen strat. Going back to the advantages of Frenzy, this would make a very nice secondary weapon, one that probably won't be dishing out the most damage, but will provide some excellent support with freeze target, cold damage against physically resistant monsters, and finally with cannot be frozen. Now with that confusing mess of offense out of the way, let's go back to some nice and simple defensive drops now, shall we? Okay, first on the list is the unique Serpent Skin Armor, Viper Magi. I'm always whining on casters that I can't find this in my mini playthroughs, so it is fitting that when I do finally find it, it is on a Frenzy Barbarian. Still, this is an excellent defensive armor for my guy because it offers those amazing 34 all resistances along with +1 to skills, which will help in boosting, well, my everything. Starting with life from battle orders to all resistances from natural res to attack rating from weapon masteries. Of course, the only reason I can even consider this is because my armor slot will now be free from my not requiring cannot be frozen there. Good stuff. Following that was one of the best defensive belts a melee character can get, String of Years. Seriously, this thing is beyond endgame material. Ask my smiter. He still uses this on Ubers and it holds up very well, providing lifesteal, percentage damage reduction, and magic damage reduced. This one didn't roll particularly well, 6% lifesteal, which is as bad as it gets, with 8 being the maximum, and 13% damage reduction with 15% being maximum. Still, on single player self-found, I would be an idiot to complain since this is most probably going to end up around my Barb's waist come hell. You know, with all this hell talk, I almost forgot that there is still a fair bit of nightmare left, and this next drop will help me get through there since it is the unique Sallet, the Rock Stopper. I think with this I am officially spoiled for choices in every single slot. Again, this didn't roll the best. I got perfect lightning resistance, however cold and fire res can go up to 40 and 50% respectively, which would have been nice, but I'm not going to grumble too much. Any additional resistance I can stack is welcome, especially if it comes with 30% FHR and 10% damage reduction. Also, this would make a great mercenary helmet for Hell as well. Had to bring Hell into it. Other than that, I did find some more cool stuff, like this unique amulet, which turned out to be Saracen's Chance, which is pretty cool with plus 12 to attributes and 24 all resistances. But when your competition is bloody Angelic's Wings, which is giving me all the attack rating in the world, you gotta realize that this is why you gotta be a hard pass for me. Other than that, I just finished up my Mephisto runs when I got to level 60. You see me using an Alibaba sword here. That is another one of those things that I found but never showed to you because I used it for like 2 runs, so I didn't really make much use out of it, and that's why I didn't really show it off to you. Anyways, at level 60 you'll see that I'll put the stat points into Vitality, and for skills I am pumping them in Taunt since it increases the damage from Frenzy. I don't really need points in Natural Resistance right now, since for the rest of Nightmare I would be wearing the Rock Stopper on my head, which more than does a wonderful job of taking care of them. As for the Act 4 experience, there is only one word to describe it: smooth. It really is amazing how much farming and leveling on melee character pays out, as your chance to hit increases so massively with levels. Also, check out this grand charm. 7 max damage, 66 attack rating, and 20 to life. For Nightmare Act 4, I'm calling that as godly as it can get. That's one hell of a find. Anywho, getting back to gameplay, I cannot believe how well this guy handles Act 4 Nightmare. If you compare this to my Whirlwind Barbarian, you can probably go to that video and find me whining about how the floaty ghosts are annoying with their mana burn, the Vellum Lord's Fire Inferno is too dang strong, and I hope it burns the Necromages alive because I hate nothing more than them. Here though, sure, those things still hold true, but my Barbarian is slicing through them all as well. I think credit in part should go to the Head Striker. Those stats that scale with character level really benefit a lot from my leveling grind as well, giving me increased max damage and 90% deadly strike. With that, the 10% lifesteal from Saigons really carries, even against dangerous mobs like the Infector and his pals. The size can be a little bit of a pain though, since I kinda screwed up my plan to take him out and get rid of the fanaticism here by teleporting all over the place, and as a result ended up losing my mercenary. Still, my Barbarian was able to take on those physical hits really well, owing to the 10% damage reduction available to me from the Rock Stopper. The mercenary came back though, and came back strong in the Diablo fight. Now with Guillaume's face, he has a whopping figure of 60% crushing blow, and combined with the 25% from my own strength and raw damage from Head Striker helping in the low end of the HP, killing single targets like Diablo is really no trouble at all. He didn't really drop me anything of value though, but I feel pretty set as it is gear-wise. Also yeah, I am kind of drowning in gold as well. I think that's one of those good problems to have though. So with all going well, you may guess that a train wreck was pretty much just waiting around the corner. I've been known to do this in real life as well. I perform well, and then I get overconfident and then fall face first, spectacularly. That's kinda what happened in the Ancients fight. Seeing the amazing performance of the Barbarian, I was confident I would be able to take down the Ancients no matter what. I mean, why not, right? I had the damage, I had the attack rating, and the momentum. Why would I possibly need to check the rolls of the Ancients before just getting in their face to fight them? It's not like Corlick could roll with stone skin and turn out to be physical immune, right? Yeah, wrong. Well played, game. If you're a fan of people falling on banana peels though, we're not done here yet. No, I actually did the exact same thing again. This time I completely disregarded the fact that Talik was cursed, Oh boy, that could only go well, right? Well, anyways, I went after the cold enchanted Maddock because he can often be pesky, but he didn't cause me much trouble here due to my cannot be frozen and high cold resistance. Corlick was the killer though, once again. He turned out to be fire enchanted, and yet again I ignored that little tidbit, and combined with Talik's curse, I'll give you one guess as to how this whole affair would have ended. Yeah, like that. The worst part about this whole thing is that killing the ancients as a whole was quite easy if not for my carelessness. Even though they did take a little longer to kill than regular monsters, that is to be expected since they do have more HP. And in this particular fight, my mercenary got slain earlier and thus I had to rely on the solo source of 25% crushing blow from my strength instead of the 70% I would get combined with my mercenary. Don't worry, I did the math. Well, I'll need more shenanigans in the throne, and the first one I used was Taunt. Quite like in normal, this is very useful to get the waves out of reach of Bale's Decrepify. The mercenary can be a wee bit annoying here, but repositioning him is easy with the teleport staff. The taunt trick also has a bonus with the third wave, making them use their melee attacks instead of casting hydras, which is good news for the mercenary as well. As for wave 4 and 5, they run at you by themselves because, quite like people that insist on playing Diablo 3 just because it is a newer game, Judgment is not their strongest suit. Therefore, against these guys, I just use Battle Cry for the most part to reduce their defense and damage, making my Barbarian's life a lot easier overall. Against Bale though, things are pretty easy as it is. Bale is by far the thickest target my Barbarian and Mercenary have faced, but the 70% crushing blow combined makes things go quite swiftly. Now Bale can obviously be quite annoying on his own with his mana burn attack, the cold V-shaped triangles, and just teleporting around and being a nuisance. Thankfully, if you just teleport really close to him, you can avoid most of them for yourself and your mercenary and just focus fire till he goes down. He didn't really drop me anything special, and I mean, expecting him to do so is kinda hoping for a little too much, so the upcoming grindy bit I did just for the experience. Here I did Bale runs because, like I mentioned before, they give very good experience, and I think it took me around 2 hours to get from level 60 to 70. Again, I didn't get any highlight drops or anything. The one highlight I would like to mention is the use of Taunt against souls. This is a really cool tech move because, much like the council members I showed to you before, it makes them use their much weaker melee attack instead of their OP lightning seers, which makes dealing with them way easier. Through that, I made my way to level 70 and moved on to Hell. Like with most of my characters, I like to do a little prep here, and that mostly consists of doing the den and some Countess runs. Also, like most of my characters, once I was done with the Countess runs, it was time to officially kick things off in Hell, and that too using the all-new accumulated gear. Now we'll start with the ethereal in the room, the demon limb. Now I know a lot of you would be a lot confused as to why I am holding an enchant stick in my primary weapon slot, that too an ethereal one, and let me explain. Since I did those 9,000 runs with my Hammerdin, I have got some really nice gear which I could have used to put in this slot. Things like a grandfather. Things like a Death Colossus sword. Things like a Beast Berserker axe. Things like a perfect Stormlash. I could go on and on about bragging about my virtual collection of weapons from a 20-year-old video game, but the point ultimately is, with post-mini playthroughs now existing, I'm going to use literally all of those weapons on this guy guaranteed in the future when I do Uber runs. I mean, those are extremely awesome weapons, and putting them on and fighting Ubers is going to be sick. Mini playthroughs, on the other hand, is meant to clear hell. With that in mind, I really thought I should give my Barbarian something a little more fair. Still a sick weapon that would work very well, but something which is unconventional and no quote-unquote build guides would put on their Barbarians. This is pretty much here to emulate something that you can do with your own Frenzy Barbarian as well. Once you're determined that he is ready to take on hell, just fire up a Blizzard Sorceress and kill Mephisto a few times till he drops you this. Yeah, in my case I used a Fire Sorceress, but the essence is the same. And in that vein I ended up finding this ethereal Demon Limb. Now this is pretty good as a main slot weapon for my Barbarian because of two reasons. The first is obviously the increased physical damage from this being an elite class weapon and ethereal with repair durability mod. The second is that all the fire damage that I get from it. I touched on this when I found the Sunshield Frost as well, that the additional elemental damage will be very handy in hell, and this thing adds 222 to 333 fire damage, and that can also be increased by enchant charges. The caveat there being that those charges can't be repaired. Now, will the Head Striker not have been a viable option here as well? Absolutely, it would have been. But I wanted to shake things up a bit, just for content reasons, if nothing else, and this is what I came up with. Now, speaking of that Sunshield Frost as well, that is my secondary weapon, upgraded to a reinforced mace. Now again, I did find some really nice damaging weapons in Nightmare Mephisto grind that I showed you, but the support from this and the offense from the Demon Limb, in my opinion, beats out all of them, since this adds the invaluable Cannot Be Frozen mod, which frees up my armor slot so I can use something a lot more powerful there. On its own too, this weapon is not bad per se. It still does okay damage with Frenzy and also adds to the elemental with cold damage. It also has freezes target ×3, which I thought would be a very valuable defensive stat, but it really has not proved to be that impressive, especially compared to my mercenary's ever-present Holy Freeze aura. Nonetheless, this captures the essence of using support-oriented weapons in the offhand for Frenzy and makes the overall package work very well. Now, with Cannot Be Frozen taken care of, I was free to use my favorite melee armor on this guy, and no prizes for guessing because it is Treachery. If you've seen a melee build done by me, you've seen me use this thing, and like Joey Tribbiani once eloquently put,
I'm not even sorry.
I know I use it all the time, but it is just that good. 45 increased attack speed, which is massive, combined with the great defensive stats like cold resistance, faster hit recovery, and of course the chance to cast level 15 Fade, which provides me with 60 all resistances and 15% damage reduction, all for the price of 1 Lem rune, which does take a little bit of a while to farm at the Countess, but as Chandler once said,
Totally worth it.
Okay, I'll stop with the Friends references now. But looking at this thing, even the 25% chance to cast level 15 Venom can be useful, providing me with yet another source of non-physical damage.
Does it get better than this?
Moving on to another one of my favorite pieces of armor, G-Face. This is hands down my favorite set item, and I mean, the offensive prowess speaks for itself. 35% crushing blow, 15% deadly strike, and 15 to strength. Also for defenses, I get 30% faster hit recovery, and I put in an Ort rune to bump up my base lightning resistance a bit as well. Keeping the train of amazing set items going, Angelic Swings with 2 Angelic's Halo. That's right, I'm going all in on the mass attack rating this time, with each ring providing me 876 base, which increases with my character level. Of course, they provide additional 20 life each on the rings as well, and I get a massive boost of 75 to life on the amulet as well. Also on the amulet is my only natural source of mana regen on this guy, in the form of 20% damage taken goes to mana. That works better than you may expect and almost makes up for the lack of mana steal perfectly okay. Another couple of set pieces that I have on are the gloves and boots combo from good old Saigons. Now I was pretty set on using Natalia's boots and Magnus skin gloves, but the 30% increased attack speed provided by these pair is something of a rarity and is also essential for me to reach the next increased attack speed breakpoint for Frenzy. Also, it helps that they add 10% lifesteal and some decent cold resistance on the boots as well. That's because my belt does not offer any resistances at all, but what it does offer is 6% lifesteal and 13% damage reduction, putting the total up to 23% lifesteal with the Demon Limb and 28% damage reduction with the Fade proc, all thanks to this string of years. Now, my charms are pretty decent on this guy as well. Let me assort them first though, otherwise it will drive a couple people watching absolutely mad. They mostly consist of attack rating, which the more that you have, the merrier. There are also a couple of resistance, life and faster hit recovery charms in there, as well with one small charm giving 3% faster run walk, cause why not? My resistances without fade are looking pretty decent. Again, the main reason behind those are my skills, which we will get to. The life pre-battle orders though is amazing on this guy. 1435 hit points, and that is after considering that I have 155 strength points and 46 dexterity points invested to equip my gear. The Barb is nothing if not a tanky SOB. This tanky sob can dish it out as well though, as my attack rating is looking off the chains good at 11.6k almost. Compare this to my usual melee characters who have around half of this when starting Hell, and you really start to see the power of the angelic combo. With that attack rating comes a lot of damage as well. As you can see from the Demon Limb, it dishes out 2.1k frenzy damage, and from the Sunshrill Frost we get almost 1099 as well. That is possible due to the following skill distribution. Firstly, maxed Frenzy. Pretty obvious since this is our main damaging skill, and maxing this increases its IAS boost, faster run walk boost, and boost to both attack rating and damage. It also has 1% magical damage. That comes from 1 point that I've put into Berserk. Now considering that that's roughly 200 magic damage, adding that with the 300 fire damage from Demon Limb, 100 cold damage from Sunshrill Frost, and approximately 400 poison damage from Venom, I effectively have 1k non-physical damage coming out of this guy. That's pretty bonkers. Now, is it enough to handle large packs of physical immunes? Yes and no. It can do it, but I would strongly suggest against it, since it can be painfully slow and dangerous as well, since you will not be able to leech back any life because lifesteal only works on physical damage. The true purpose of this 1k non-physical damage is really going to be against monsters with high physical resistances like undead mobs, of which there is an abundance of in the game, where hopefully this would add an extra boost to the killing speed of those guys. As far as the rest of the skills go, I have 20 points into Mace Mastery since, obviously, now we're back to using maces, and this adds additional damage, attack rating, and crit chance, which is way more valuable now since we don't have the 100% deadly strike from Head Striker anymore. I also have 1 point in increased speed for the lovely faster run walk boost, and 14 hard points into natural resistance. Now the boosts from this skill do have severely diminishing returns the more points you invest into this, so this is where I decided to stop, because this is where really I thought that I was comfortable with my base resistances. Finally are the battle cries, or as I like to think of them, the tool belt of the Barbarian. Now I have 1 point in each of the pre-buffs, Shout, Battle Orders, and Battle Command. I choose to only put 1 point in BO to boost my damage instead of my life since it is pretty high as it is without any boosts. Battle Cry is one of my favorite skills now. I use this on pretty much every major boss pack I fight since it provides a sizable defense drop and also, this is very important in Hell, a sizable drop in their physical damage as well. Then the rest of my points I have invested into Taunt. Now this war cry is great for isolating mobs to kill them one by one, or just reverse Uno, lead them somewhere and then teleport out of there. The reason I have so many points in this skill is because it adds damage to Frenzy, which is actually a pretty sizable increase as well. Speaking of the big guns, the mercenary is wearing my old skin of the Viper Magi. This is what I was wearing before I got Treachery, and it is a pretty good defensive armor overall. Sure, the 30% FCR goes to waste here, but the 34 all res does help him out a lot. He's also wearing my old Rock Stopper, again, just to get his defenses up. Get him some all resistances and some damage reduction while we're at it. Finally, he has a strength in a Stygian Pike. I always end up with this thing somehow. I mean, the strength is intentional since it is a cheap and effective rune word, but the Stygian Pike being the only elite class weapon I can find with 2 sockets is a little bizarre, but it works for him, so it works for me. Hopefully it keeps working as we go on to face Andariel as well. Now my combined crushing blow with the mercenary has gone down from Nightmare, but it was still at a pretty respectable approximately 52% chance, which is going to be great for this fight. What was also great was the additional damage to demons modifier that Demon Limb has on it. What wasn't great though was being surrounded by these zombies while fighting Andariel. These guys are an absolute nightmare for characters that deal physical damage, so I wanted to kite around them and keep them out of the fight. The mercenary died in this process, predictably, but he had done his job at providing me with a decent start to the fight, and thus with my raw damaging weapons, my Barbarian was able to finish this off on his own. Now don't let that example of zombies defer you into thinking that this guy can't handle physical resists. In fact, this example of the maggot lair should be enough to show you that even physical immune mobs, at least the low HP ones like these mosquitoes, are really not a problem for him at all. Problem is with other physical immune mobs which are more powerful, both HP and damage wise, like the ghosts that I mentioned from the Countess Tower and the ones here in Arcane Sanctuary. Still, as you can see, I was able to kill them in the end. It does hurt my mercenary a lot though, since he can't steal any life back and thus I have to back him up with a lot of potions, but it is totally doable. Kal Rasha's tomb can leave you in a pickle because there is just an abundance of monsters in every corner, and with little to no area of effect, they can be a nightmare to kill. Therefore, I like to teleport out of here mostly till I reach the chamber room. Here obviously we face Durian. Now he was a considerably longer fight than Andariel, and credit has to be given to his holy freeze aura that had me frozen the whole time and slowed down my attacks. It wasn't detrimental at all though, since his damage is quite pathetic compared to the Poison Queen, and as you can see I had my mercenary for the whole fight, comfortably sitting at full HP while we both whittled Durian down with crushing blows and then in the end with raw damage to finish him off. The good news doesn't stop there though, because this guy really did perform well in Act 3 as well. The flares are often a choke point for most of my hell characters, but this guy deals out physical damage that does not discriminate and takes care of all of them. Sure, they can be a wee bit dangerous, especially when you have a curse on, but with Treachery, you have reduced curse duration as well with the Fate proc, so that isn't a problem for long. The only monster that gave me a problem in the Flare jungle was Stormtree, and that too because he was an especially annoying combo of Lightning Enchanted, Conviction Aura, and Mana Burn, completely shutting my attacks down as I was out of mana pots and then doing huge damage with Conviction and Lightning Bolts. But again, one trip to town is all it took to fix that situation as well. Travincle went really well as well. I used the strategy to taunt monsters out one by one to avoid getting flustered, and mostly for the benefit of my mercenary so as to not drown him in a sea of hydras, and the plan worked really well. As you can see, the lifesteal really holds up here as I'm able to take these council members down. And also the Fate proc from Treachery allows me to have 75 fire resistance, so I don't have to worry that much about hydras myself. Well, the good news just keeps on rolling in as we go into the Mephisto fight. Now I gotta be honest, after that Durian scrap I was really not expecting what I just witnessed here, but Uncle Mephi got his ass handed to him in this one. He wasn't able to deal much damage back neither, since my Barbarian had Fate procced with Treachery, which again maxed out my resistances, and thankfully Pratham was being wise here by sticking behind Mephisto and poking him from there time to time. That's pretty much all I need from him really though. Also, after dying, Mephisto dropped the unique trellised armor, which is the Iron Pelt. If this would have been the Wire Fleece, it would have been my favorite unique mercenary armor, the Gladiator's Bane, which would have been awesome. For now though, I think I will stick to the Viper over this thing because of the additional fire res that I think will be very helpful for my mercenary, especially in the act that's coming up. Speaking of the act that's coming up, I wanted to get a strong start to Act 4 so as to gauge how the rest of it was gonna go, and this definitely isn't something I would have planned. Now the main problem here was that the boss was mana burn again and was able to stun lock me while I was not able to hit back and recover any life with frenzy in time. Situations are a lot better though if that isn't the case. Still, the lack of mana steal has started to sting a bit, and for chaos I had to improvise my way around that. That was to use Taunt on these floaty dudes which sap your mana, but when taunted, they prefer you to hit with their melee attacks, which makes them considerably less annoying. Taunt is useful for the 3 lesser evils as well. Here with the Infector pack, I was trying to separate the minions from the boss so as to kill them all comfortably and to make sure that my mercenary was able to survive. Funny then that it was because of him that this plan failed a couple of times and I had to teleport to relocate. Mercenary AIs are bad, but this dude is a complete idiot as he literally kept walking into death and I had to save him with casting Battle Cry and giving him health pots throughout the fight. In the end though, I was able to lure enough of them away from Infector and then kill Infector himself to end the fight. Taunt works great against Decise and his boys as well. The idea here being simple, to lure them out of the fanaticism of Decise and kill them clean. Then we can focus on Decise, whose fanaticism seemed to have turned into holy shock. I assume this was a glitch because he kept dancing between Decrepify and Amp damage as well. For no reason it seemed, but it works for me. I was able to kill him pretty easily now that his minions were all dead. Now generally Grand Vizier isn't even talked about in these segments, but this time he actually did something worthwhile, and that was he spawned as a physical immune. Now that is annoying, but it still gives me another good target to show you how nicely this guy deals with physical immunes without any gear change. Now you see why using that Demon Limb with that fire damage, using that Sunshrill Frost with that cold damage, and all those investments into Berserk for the magic damage and Venom from Fade all coming in to help me out in this fight, and here's the result. Finally, we had Diablo. Now this fight was quite easy. It wasn't the fastest, nor actually slow in any form. It just seemed like a casual duel because Diablo really did not have any major threatening damage dealing moves against me. His lightning hose couldn't reach me, and for some reason he completely refrained on using his second strongest attack, which is the Firestorm. Therefore, his time in the game was done completely, and he was sent off for his monthly dose of eternal suffering. Now Act 5 started out strong with the Shank quest going well with some taunt and battle cry shenanigans, and I gotta say, I did not expect this weapon set to perform this well, let alone carrying all the way through Hell Act 5. This damage is really impressive. Anywho, I did have trouble while rescuing Anya because of course the gatekeepers for her being the Frozenstein group are always mana burn, and we all saw how that road ends in Act 4, so I just decided not to mess with them too much and teleported away. Saved Anya and then saved and exited myself. I won't get far from the Ancients though, which is why I really wanted to make sure that I got the rolls on these guys right. The first 3 or so were scary with Might Aura or Cursed Ancients, which can be really scary to fight, especially with a melee character since you have to go face to face. The roll with which I settled in the end had an extra strong and lightning enchanted Talic, which I went after first. Obviously I wanted to avoid any physical immunes here. Mana burn would have been also detrimental, so I avoided that as well. Therefore, although this roll might seem like a little dangerous because Talic is extra strong and lightning enchanted, this still was the best that I could get, and honestly it really was not that tough to take him down, especially from the help of the mercenary and completely singling him out. Core Lake was fire enchanted with teleportation, which are 2 pretty harmless rolls. That is, unless of course he dies in the fiery explosion, which yes, almost killed me here as well. You know, I could have learned from my past, but that's boring. Why would I want to do that, right? Finally, Madoc was Stone Skin, which was annoying and did take a little bit to kill, but like I mentioned before, it could have been a lot worse. This roll that I ended up settling on was actually really nice, since all the 3 Ancients were manageable, none of them had any crazy damage, and overall the whole Ancients fight was seriously very smooth. I mean, you can just see here that he did take a while to kill, but I backed him into a corner, and considering that he wasn't really doing much damage back due to my max lightning resistance from Fade, this fight here was in the bag. After that, the World Stone was actually my best ever, I think, in any mini playthrough. I literally never show this part because I always end up like dying or resetting here for like 30 minutes here, but with this guy it was an absolute breeze. Exits very close to entrances and waypoints, and not a lot to be threatened by the monsters around as well. The throne itself was filled with pretty much the worst 3 mobs though. Broomstick Men, Death Lords, and freaking Souls. Like, the only way this could have been worse would have been with Dolls or Dark Lords, but hear me out here. I actually managed to clear it. This is what makes the Barbarian so great. Using your tool belt of Warcry trickeries, you can pretty much win a lot of situations in the game, and here, my tool of choice was Taunt once again. Here to completely stop the Dark Lords or the Souls from using their ranged attacks and thus making their attacks way weaker because they instead use their melee ones. Speaking of melee, I also got like 1 Death Lord in the throne, so that was lucky, and therefore clearing the throne was not that much of a problem. The taunt helped a lot with the waves as well. Everything went pretty much swimmingly up to wave 3, and here you can see me kill Bartok and all of his lackeys as well with no problem. Wave 4 was a bit of a problem since I kind of cornered myself here, and of course they turned out to be mana burn, and I turned out to be out of mana potions. So I just took the hit, peaced out, took a quick trip to town, and that problem fixed itself as well. The Lister pack, however, being Bale's personal assistants, can't be taunted, have quite high physical resistance, and they rolled with mana burn, because of course they did. Why would they not roll with mana burn? Therefore, leading them out and teleporting in was the only logical play here. I mean, you can see that the couple of hits that I landed with Frenzy onto Lister did very little damage. It would have taken like probably 10 minutes for me to kill them, and I just did not want to do it. I was at the end of the game, and honestly, I didn't even have to use Taunt to lure them out since the minions always follow the boss. So it was just too easy to drag them out, and therefore I did it. And here we are at the Bale fight. To give you an idea of how easy street this fight was, I actually went AFK for 30 seconds. Just put something down on left click and came back and was perfectly at full health and chasing around Bale, who was now at half HP. Yeah, needless to say that this guy is miles better than his whirlwind counterpart. I have to say that is due to the combination of leveling and grinding in regular intervals that I did, and of course the cheeky hand down of an item that has made it possible, and I absolutely loved playing through with him, especially Nightmare and Hell modes. Hopefully you enjoyed this too, and overall I hope you find this content riveting. Yours truly with... Actually, here's something funny. Tyrael came down after the Bale fight, and he did the whole thing where I thank you, mortal, and then he opened the portal to Destruction's End, and the portal that he created turned out to be on the ledge of the platform, so I literally couldn't get into it. Like, seriously, like I'm trying, Tyrael, like it's not working, man. Like, you sure you made this right? Like, I'm going, whatever, you know what? I'll just save and quit. Just as well. With love.